Welcome to this explainer on the myth of the Roman dog tag. Today, we're on a mission. We're going to uncover the truth behind a wildly popular historical assumption, and we're doing it using actual, hard archaeological evidence. It's time to separate the Hollywood fantasy from the reality of the dirt. Let's get into it.
You know the scene, right? It's a given in almost every movie, TV show, or book about the Roman army. You've got that weary legionary, battle-scarred, clutching a little metal tag around his neck. But we have to stop and ask ourselves a central question. Did Roman legionaries actually wear dog tags? Well, the answer might create some serious cognitive dissonance for you today, but it's going to completely change how you picture ancient warfare.
Okay, let's dive into this. The Roman dog tag myth. What we assume versus what we actually know.
To dismantle this deeply rooted modern myth, we have to look past our own assumptions and contrast them with the ancient reality. Think about modern dog tags. They're standardized, they're an entire system of body-worn personal identification used across a whole military. But the Roman reality? Well, it was a world absolutely saturated with marking systems, sure, but they were highly varied. They were almost always attached to property or baggage. The focus was intensely on unit logistics, not the individual soldier's neck. So how did we get this so wrong?
Well, it basically got lost in translation. Let's unpack the ancient terminology.
The root of this whole myth actually stems from modern scholars collapsing entirely distinct Latin terminology. First up, we have the word tessera. Now, the ancient literary baseline from historians like Polybius is incredibly clear on this. A tessera was essentially a wooden tablet that bore a watchword. It would be passed from unit to unit to prove that a command had circulated correctly. You can kind of think of it as a physical sticky note for passwords. It's a document for guard administration, definitely not a personal piece of metal you wore on your body.
And then there's the signaculum. In Latin, this broadly translates to a seal, a stamp, or a mark. But archaeologically speaking, it refers to the physical tool used to actually make that mark. Think along the lines of a branding iron or a stamp die. It wasn't a tag worn by a person at all. It was the instrument leaving an impression on something else entirely. And frankly, this is where the whole dog tag claim really starts to fall apart.
Now, what's really interesting here is this famous quote from Vegetius. People love to point to this specific line, which roughly translates to, "A recruit should not immediately be marked," and they hold it up as definitive proof of Roman dog tags. But here's the catch. Vegetius is a late Roman source, and scholars widely agree he's actually referring to bodily marking here. We're talking about the permanent military tattoos of the late empire, absolutely not a 2nd century metal neck tag. You simply cannot project this practice backward in time to prove the existence of a physical tag.
Tools versus tags. Let's categorize the actual archaeological evidence.
So if the ancient texts don't support it, what about the physical stuff they left behind? Let's put on our detective hats and categorize the artifacts. When we do that, a totally different picture emerges. Take lead tags, for instance. The ones excavated in Britain, at places like Caerleon and Usk, literally recorded package numbers, weights, and values in denarii. They were for luggage, not human bodies. It just proves that even in antiquity, the military needed a way to track lost bags. Then, you have the bronze and iron signacula, which were used to brand or stamp other materials. There's a massive fundamental divide here between an inscribed object, like a baggage label, and a tool meant to leave an inscription.
Let's move to Roman dacia and see how this builds into a highly militarized case study.
To really put this to the test, we can zoom in on the heavily militarized frontier province of Roman Dacia. I mean, if there was a standard dog tag system, we should definitely find it here, right? Well, instead, Dacia is just unusually rich in marking instruments. Take the suitor signaculum, for example. This is a forged iron piece. It's got a long shaft and a 3-armed head, bearing the abbreviated name of a specific military unit. It is definitively a branding iron. It would have been used hot, or maybe by applying heavy pressure, to mark animals, leather, wood, or even bricks. It just completely proves they were branding for unit logistics. They were not making personal jewelry for the troops.
So the crucial point is that even when we look at the smaller bronze items from Dacia, like the pieces found at Bucciumi, the story remains exactly the same. We're looking at tabula ansata-style labels and little disc appliques. They feature point-punched inscriptions naming cohorts, centuries, or specific officers. Their varied shapes and designs visually prove that these were property labels. They were meant to be attached to equipment or maybe wooden structures. They were absolutely not standard issue tags hanging around a soldier's neck.
Let's compare two specific Dacian bronze labels to really hammer this home.
Consider a small bronze disc from Porolissum. It was point-punched, erased, and reinscribed multiple times. That perfectly aligns with reusable administrative logistics. Just think of it like a reusable shipping label. Then contrast that with a plaque from Apulum, marking Maximus from the century of Publius. That points directly to subunit ownership labeling. A modern dog tag is a once-for-all personal ID. It certainly doesn't get erased and just handed over to the next guy in line.
Which brings us to administration, not identification. The true reality of Roman logistics.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final verdict. When we bring all of this literary and archaeological evidence together, we get a crystal clear view of what the Roman military actually cared about. Honestly, they were absolutely obsessed with administration and logistics. They marked their units, they branded their property, they meticulously sealed their baggage bundles, and they tightly managed guard watchwords. But they simply did not have an empire-wide, standardized system of personal dog tags. The modern comparison is, well, it's merely a metaphor that we've just taken way too literally over the years.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating and maybe slightly unsettling thought. If the Roman dog tag is a myth born out of mistranslation and modern assumptions, well, what other modern military traditions have we falsely projected onto the ancient past? It really makes you rethink everything you see in historical pop culture, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it challenged your perspective today, and remember, keep questioning what you think you know.